Hello, everybody. This is Debbie, from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable. And as normal, on a Saturday, I speak to educators around the world, talking to them about COVID, the experience of COVID, before COVID, during COVID, and now after COVID. What are the lessons learned? How things are for them? Is it a situation where business as normal? Does anybody remember that we had a pandemic and the impact it had on us psychologically and physically and everything else, not only on us, but also on the children we teach. So that's one of the reasons why I have the show every Saturday, where we actually have a discussion. So we actually keep it running so that people remember individual mental health is paramount and it's important. And people are still struggling out there. Welcome, welcome, welcome to my guest, Desiree. Fantastic you have it on. I'm really grateful that you've actually accepted the offer to come on. Thank you for that. Introduce
Thank you
yourself.
for the offer. So, my name is Desiree Watanabe, and I'm a teacher in Cypress, Texas. This is my 13th year teaching. I teach high school level kiddos. I've taught grades 10th through 12th. I've taught chemistry, physics, earth and space, astronomy. I think that's all. Yes.
That's all.
and
That's fantastic.
Yes, I have coached cheer. I've sponsored Destination Imagination. I currently sponsor our garden club where our kiddos learn how to plant, cultivate, and tend the land. And everything we harvest, they get to take home. I'm also going to be this upcoming year a student council sponsor. So I'm super
Okay.
excited about that opportunity. I've also sponsored African Student Association, which was really, really fun. I did that for 4 years. Um, but my goal is to definitely um, learn more about social emotional learning so that not only I can be more healthy educator, but I can also provide aid to my other fellow educators.
Mhm. Thank you for that because they really do need that. Eh?
Mhm.
They really do need that because that's what I found out when I actually came back after COVID. Because a lot of them did not have psychology background, they were not aware that the children in their care were falling apart.
Mhm.
So a lot of them did not even have presence of mind to say to the students, how was it? What was it like for you? How are you now? They actually just
Mhm.
went straight into teaching the contents. In
Yes.
some of the schools, when I went in there, I realized that some of the students were falling apart. That's
Mhm.
why they were not listening, they were not paying attention because they had baggages which no
Yes.
one tried to help them to unload it. And
Yes.
what you say you're going to do, Desiree, that's fantastic because a lot of educators are not aware and they need those support. They need to
Mhm.
know that, people like us are in the corner because not
Mhm.
only for themselves, also for the students they're teaching, because it's a
For
big thing
sure.
and it's real, eh?
It is. It's super important.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, what was it like for you before COVID being a teacher?
Okay. So before COVID, I laugh because when I entered in education, I quickly learned learning management systems, which I feel like those didn't become really big until after COVID because we had to. So I had done trainings on trainings on trainings on technology, learning those systems. And I used Schoology for the first 6 years of teaching. And then when I switched districts, we moved to Google Classroom because they didn't pay for Schoology. And I remember the students I had because I started with them in 10th grade because I started at a school that had only been open for 2 years. So we only had freshmen and sophomores. So I kind of moved up every year that they moved up. So I started with them in 10th grade using Google Classroom. And by the time they became seniors, I laughed because they would complain all the time. They're like, when are we ever going to need to know how to submit assignments on Google? Like, why do we have to do this? And I was like, and the reason I did that was because my first experience with submitting stuff online was in college, and that was a terrible experience. And so when I became an educator, I was like, my kids will not be in this same situation. So they're going to know how to use these systems and use all of the technology that we have access to. So the first thing I said when school was canceled and we were using Google Classroom, I was like, so tell me again why you didn't need to learn how to do this. Um, but the thing that I know as far as my teaching style, I pre-COVID, I did a lot of project-based learning. And I because it was easier then. Post-COVID, getting kids to do projects has been really hard. Been really, really hard.
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. I hear that. Because you see, before COVID, technology wasn't a thing school was using in the areas I've been in. Because I keep
Mhm,
saying it all the time and I repeat it. It's like my mantra. Every industry have embraced technology in a big way, except
mhm.
the education system.
Yes.
Education system is still archaic, still in
Mhm.
the 20th century, when Butler education was, started. Therefore,
Yes.
there's been no movements. But COVID
Mhm.
have forced us
It
to
has.
actually embrace technology. But the sad thing about it, we embrace it only for that period, and we've gone back to our old ways.
I am also observing that. I because technology was something that I've always incorporated in my teaching style, it's still something that I still incorporate. I'm slowly beginning to do some of the project-based learning that I used to do, because I think kids are more willing to do the things now, those kinesthetic activities that they weren't necessarily willing to do um, the year right after COVID. Because
Mm.
this has been what, well, no, it's been like 3 school years,
Yes, about three
right?
years. Yeah, yeah.
And those first last year, the kids had a lot of fun, but those pre 2 years, just getting them to understand, like, you have to learn, and in order to learn, you have to do something.
Mhm.
Because I don't know how it was for you guys, but teachers, not me, were basically just giving grades for nothing. And so
Mhm.
they got used to that. They didn't have to do anything to get a grade, and they would pass and move to the next grade.
Mhm.
Um, so when they get to me, they're like, why are you so extra? Why?
Exactly.
I teach science, so I'm not going to half do that for you guys. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear that because during the year of COVID, I think we also had teachers assess grades. So
Mhm,
their results were based on teacher assessed grade. And like you, a lot of them want to know, oh, why do we have to be doing the national exams now? Duh, 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 duh.
mhm,
I say, well, welcome to reality,
mhm,
right? I say at that time there was no other option, but now you guys are fine, so you now need to use your brains. And
mhm.
some of the challenges we had during COVID in terms of classroom management, what was it like for you?
For me, it was honestly pretty simple because
Okay.
since my district, I say simple for the kids that were in class, it was hard for the kids that weren't. So, what we had to do in my district is we had a Zoom camera set up. So, for me, because again, I'm extra and I'm used to moving around my classroom, I had a camera set up in the back and a camera set up in the front so that the students who were at home could see what was going on all throughout the classroom. And I also purchased an extra computer screen that faced the other students in the class so they could see the students when they showed their face for the ones that were at home. But because more than, I'd say about 70% of our students stayed home. And so our class sizes were extremely small. And because of that small size, that reduce the need for issues. Like my kids didn't give me any issues during that time. It was just more so our workload and trying to keep up with Zoom, modifying assignments. but classroom management wasn't bad in class. Now, when they were at home, getting them to show their faces instead of their ceiling fans, that was almost impossible. That was the part that irritated me because I know I'm like, if I'm looking at your ceiling fan, you're probably asleep. You're not listening to anything that's happening right now, which was obnoxious.
Yep. Yep. That's one of the thank you for that. That's one of the situation, right? Because I had my challenge as well. The students were asleep.
Hmm.
They logged on, and after a while, when I log off, their log on is still there. So you know they were not even listening to you.
No.
You
And
know.
I had students because I have good relationship with my kiddos, so they share things with me that they might not share. But and I also feel for those kids. So I had students say, I'm responsible for taking care of my younger siblings while I'm here. So yes, I have to be in your class, but I also have to cook them food. So they would log on and they would send me messages. They're like, "Hey, I'm going to log off real quick, or I'm going to walk away real quick because I need to get breakfast or help my little sister or little brother with their homework." And so I know, and I try to be cognizant of that too. I try to be aware that with us being educators, when we got shut down and we had to go home, we're having to make sure our students have something to do, but we have to make sure too that our kiddos at home are doing what they're supposed to be doing for their classes. So I was pretty understanding and patient with that aspect. I will say when we had our shutdown, the thing that irritated me though was in our district, they told us that they didn't want us outside the house during school hours. And I'm like, you're crazy. We're stuck in this house all day. I'm walking my kids to the park and I'll have my computer available. But I'm not about to stay in the house. But parents were complaining, teachers are at the park, and like, come on now.
You
Y'all's kids
human.
aren't even doing the work.
Yeah, but you're human.
Yes.
You also need a break.
Yes.
They thought we were robots, you know.
Yes. And they wanted, and our students thought that they should have access to us throughout the day. So I had to create that boundary. Like, listen, you can contact me through these hours.
Yeah.
After that, I'm not going to respond until the next day.
Yeah. And I think that was important. Some teachers were able to put the boundaries, but
Hmm.
teachers that were not able to put the boundaries, they soon realized how burnout they became and that
Hmm.
the students wanted them at the beck and call all the time.
Hmm. Exactly.
So it was so important to set boundaries because people needed to know that we had a life apart from
Hmm.
teaching.
Yes. Yes. And at the time, my son, I think, was in kinder, and my son, like me, has ADHD. And so being still for long periods of time, that's not a thing for him. Like he has to go move. And
Mhm.
so we had to go out because if not, mommy was going to be crazy.
Exactly, exactly. But you also had a life. That's the thing
Hmm.
about it. That was one of the challenges in terms of during COVID, when teachers were saying that they were feeling anxious. It
Hmm.
was what do you mean you're feeling anxious? You're supposed to be teaching. And they forgot that we were human as well.
Hmm. One of the things that really did cause me anxiety was wearing the mask. And the reason being is I, unfortunately, even though I love being outside, am allergic to the great outdoors, like very bad. And I also, it made me go to the doctor's office because I had to check. I'm like, I can't breathe in these masks. Like, I feel like I'm suffocating, and it was causing me anxiety because I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to suffocate. And that was when I learned that I had like a 70% blockage in my sinuses. So I literally really couldn't breathe. So it was following that year that I ended up having to have the sinus surgery, and they had to remove sinuses from both sides and fix the deviated septum. But like I said, out of COVID came a lot of understanding, a lot
Mhm.
of slowing down, a lot of realizing that we come first. We have to come first because if
Mhm.
our cups aren't full, we can't fill with an empty
Mhm.
cup.
Mhm. Mhm. That is so true. And that is so important that we remind people of that.
Hmm.
Because as if, even now after COVID, people still want everything out of us.
Yes.
The
They want
expect,
more.
yeah, exactly. As if, you know, what do you mean you're tired? It's like
Hmm.
everything out of us and not remembering that, okay, we're human. We feel
Hmm.
tired, not only
Yes.
tired, we're exhausted because teaching is
Yes.
exhausting.
It is. It is. I saw a post somewhere on social media that I wish I had a saved it, but it was just talking about how teachers not only just invest knowledge to our kids, but we're emotionally connected, we're mentally connected with them. So we're using all of these aspects of who we are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually to
Hmm.
do our jobs. And that
Hmm.
is extremely draining
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the fact is, it's not one off, we do that every day
every
for
day.
5 to 6 hours. And we have to do that with every child that comes
Yes.
through our door.
Yes. And let alone, one of the things too I saw on social media, which I'm like, oh my goodness, you're right. Like, we're not only just dealing with students that have the same mental capacity or the same learning styles. So, on top of all those things, and that was one of the things that I struggled with during COVID, because I'm like, my kinesthetic learners, they're at home that don't have access to the materials that we're using, struggled with learning those concepts because they were unable to touch and do, which is
Mhm.
really super important in the exploration and observation processes in science. And so our visual learners did fine. Our audio learners definitely did great if they were awake. but
Exactly.
that posed a challenge. And then what was an also really hard challenge was, how do we provide accommodations to our special ed students
Mhm.
if they're at
Mhm.
home? How do we do that?
Mhm. Mhm.
How do we? And so we had to learn, I think, yeah, that's what we did. So I was responsible for reading the tests. So we created like an audio that the kids could play for the kids that had those accommodations where the test had to be read.
Mhm.
They got to listen to my voice, read the question and the answer choices. But the part that kind of sucks for them is if there's a word that they don't understand, they can't necessarily ask those questions, because
Mhm.
even though the kids were supposed to log in during the class, our district told us that if they logged in at any point in the day, we had to mark their attendance. So they could do the work basically whenever they felt like it. They didn't have to do it during that specific time that they were in that specific class. And so when it came to grading, holding kids accountable for due dates, that wasn't a thing. And that was hard for me because I'm very strategic about how I get things done. And so I
Mhm.
really struggle because I'm
Mhm.
like, there needs to be organization and there's not.
Yeah, so thank you for that. As a result of that, COVID have taught you to slow down, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. So I know a lot of times when we talk about COVID, we look at all the negative things, but a positive aspect for COVID for me definitely had me and my family question what we considered normal. And is that
Mhm.
really normal? Is what we considered normal healthy? And the answer to that was no. And
Mhm.
so I really feel like COVID, outside of all of the loss that many people experience, was an opportunity to get us to slow down and be in the moment and be present
Mhm.
with our loved ones. It's not always work, work, work. It's not always go, go, go. We need to slow down. We need to rest, relax so our body can repair, because it's during the rest that our cells have that opportunity to repel and do the things, let
Mhm.
alone even your brain. I love neuroscience. And so one of the things that I always tell my students, because teenagers, they don't sleep, they play the game and then wake up. They play the game till like 4 o'clock, take a 2 hour nap, and come to school. And I told him there's research in neuroscience that talks about how when you sleep, your brain clears out all of the excess, all the stuff you don't need. And when you don't allow your brain to do those things, they believe that's what leads to dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. So I just remind them, hey guys, rest is important. It's not something that, because growing up, we thought that sleeping would be lazy. Like if you sleep a lot, you're lazy.
Mhm.
Um, but rest is essential. And the amount of hours sleep really depend upon the person.
Mhm. 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 It is, thank you for that. It is so very true because some schools were saying that the students could sleep and when they get up, they then do the work,
Hmm.
right? And another thing is they also find there's research showing that students are not able to connect early in the morning. From 10 o'clock,
Oh, yeah.
teenagers are good. Before 10, sorry, we actually, as teachers, we noticing that. Some of them can't even get to the class for 9 o'clock, right?
I tell my students all the time, I'm like, I feel sorry for first and second period because my brain is not functioning. I don't really wake up fully. I tell them I'm a zombie. I'm present. I don't know what my brain is doing during first and second period, but I don't wake up personally until third. So I 100% understand that because our campus, the kids, our late bell rings at 7:20 in the morning. And so a lot of our kids are getting to school, especially if they're an athlete, they're getting there by 6 o'clock in the morning. So kids are arriving between 6 and 6:30 to get to school, which means they have to get up well before that so that they can make it to school.
Wow. That in
Yes.
the morning.
Yes.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, in the UK, the children would even dream about those kind of stuff, which means every day I'll be having lateness on my register because even now for 9 o'clock, or for 8:40, you see some of them still late.
Wow.
8:40, they're still late. They can't really get it. They can't get it together.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Especially this is a situation we've had, especially when they came back after COVID, because they had no discipline and
Nope.
they got up, if at all, to listen to, the lessons if they needed
Mhm.
to, if they cared to. So which means that when we went back after COVID, you were having nobody in your class
Mhm.
because they did not know how to cope, regulate. They had no idea of time, all of that. So that's one of the biggest thing we had in terms of coming back after COVID, where the lessons were starting late and later, the students weren't turning up. It was frustrating.
It
But then we
was.
had to remind ourselves that, hold on, they had no discipline, they had no
Mhm.
management, time management,
Mhm.
etc. Parents probably wasn't at home, so they were doing
Mhm.
their own thing, trying to log on to the lessons that wasn't happening. And I'm also a parent of teenagers, so I actually saw what was happening, so I understood. I'm not
Yes.
saying it was right, but I understood.
Yes, 100%. One of the things that I know COVID did negatively impact, and I feel like students are starting to get out of that, but that interacting with each other, that
Mhm.
social skills, um, that year that we came back after we did the asynchronous and the synchronous learning, students felt so awkward talking to other students. It was so weird.
Oh,
And I'm like, guys, listen, we are social beings, so we're going to do this.
yeah.
Like, I don't want to say I don't care because they know that I love them and we develop those relationships. We spend one of the things that I do, because I think it's important. I don't really care. I care about curriculum, obviously, because I'm a teacher, but I spend the first week just getting to know students. Like we're
Mhm.
doing different activities unrelated to curriculum. I don't touch curriculum the first week that we come back or that we start school. And I typically leave 2 or 3 days after we come back from Christmas break where we just get to know each other again because
Mhm.
I understand that one of the things that we say all the time here is students don't care what you know until
Mhm.
they know you care. And so
Yes.
that gives me that opportunity to develop those relationships with my kids, which suffered during COVID because the kids that were not on campus who just showed me they're ceiling fans, I never got to know them. And it sucked because I would have kids come to me the following year and they were like, I was in your class. I was like, no, you weren't. They're like,
Mhm.
yeah, I was on the Zoom. I was like, oh, so you were one of the ceiling fans. That's why I don't recognize your face.
It's,
So,
it's interesting when you say that, right? Because I remember when we were teaching them online, and when we went back, I think we went back to March, and she was saying to me, "Hi, Miss. Hi, Miss." I said, "Do I know you?" They say,
yes,
"Yes, Miss." I said, "Really?" I said, "Because I've never seen your face, because you've never
exactly.
had your camera on. You had whatever images, whereas you saw me. So you
Yes,
know who I was, but I
yes.
didn't know you." And I
No.
find that was such, as you rightly say, such a disadvantage. Eh?
Hmm.
It was such a disadvantage because students were telling you that then, year 10, year 12 and 13, you didn't have a clue who they were.
Hmm.
Forget about the names. Because even
Yes,
though they tell you the name, you're thinking, where did you see that name? Eh, That was
yes.
hard.
It was very hard. It was very hard. And it's funny because when they came back and they'd be like, hi, Miss Audenovi. Hi. You don't remember me, do you? No, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Describe your ceiling fan. Maybe I'll remember that.
Yeah, exactly, isn't it? And that was for me, some of the downside of COVID, not being able to connect with the students.
Yes.
But when we actually came back full on, how did you manage to build, relationship with them? Because you
So
said
I
for the
was
first 2 weeks.
super excited that we were 100% back. Um, so I did what I normally do. I spend my first week providing students opportunities. We play get to know you games. We do some um, games that work on their critical thinking skills, whether it be observations or deductive reasoning. Um, but they would have to do it with someone else. So anything that we did that first week, they're doing it in groups, and I would move them around because it was very important for me not for them to only get to know me, but to get to know each other because
Mhm,
we're pretty much this is our family. First period, Earth and Space, we are a family. And
mhm,
so we need to be able to understand our dynamics. We need to understand how we can collaborate, how we work in our groups. So I don't have issues with developing relationships when the kids are in the building. That's
mhm,
actually one of the things that I am always provided the opportunity to train teachers on when we come back to school is on those relational skills and how to get kids to develop how to develop those relationships because not every teacher is a natural at that. So I was
mhm,
100% happy. The issue though was attendance, and the issue still is attendance. So
mhm.
one of the things, and I don't know how many people are aware, but in the state of Texas, our governor, he is trying to get this is his last year. He's trying to get past these voucher things. So even though our state has a surplus of billions of dollars, he's refusing to give them to public education. And because of that, our districts are having to cut lots of funds. So I'm a part of the district. I was a part of the District of Innovation committee, but I'm also a part of. So we have this committee where there's one person from every campus in the district, and we come and we talk about some of the issues. And so because of that, I kind of know like what our deficit is, and we're like $100 million deficit. But for some reason, they said 40 million of that will be covered by the state somehow. And so we have to figure out how to recoup the 65 or the 60 million that we're deficit. So the first thing that they did is they fired all librarians in
Oh,
every school in our district. And what they're going to do is they're going to have one librarian for every 3 or 5 schools, and they're
wow.
just going to rotate throughout the week. to the different schools. And so right now we're having to cut funds, which means since the principals are going to have smaller budgets, the budgets that each department gets to buy the things that we need to teach the kiddos is probably going to decrease, which means it's going to put more on our plates because even though they don't have the money to provide, our students still need to learn the concepts. And
Exactly.
specifically in science, they still need to do the labs. And
Mhm.
so, because their attendance is so bad, though, that has cost us millions as well in attendance. And yeah, it's a struggle.
Is that the funds is dependent on attendance.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Yes. Here was here also. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So thank you for that. So what in terms of discipline, what was discipline like when you came back to school?
Terrible.
One word, terrible.
Yes. Um,
So how
yes.
did you rectify it? How did you rectify to be okay? Is it okay?
Um, I wish I could say it's improving, but one of our issues, and I know it's not just my campus, and I'm pretty sure it's not just the state of Texas or my district, but our biggest issues right now is skipping. Kids just walk the hallways all day and vaping. Um, so that has been huge. So much so we're not supposed to allow students to go out to the bathroom, which is really, really hard. Because I'm like, if I have to go to the bathroom, I'm leaving. I don't care who's in my classroom. I'm going to go to the bathroom because I'm not about to hold it. So if my kids really need to go, I let them go. But the issue is, some teachers didn't know their students well enough to know who was telling the truth and who wasn't, because they would
Mhm.
let some students out thinking that it was an emergency, and that's the kid that's going to walk the hallways. And so, one of the things that I suggested, because I'm working on my principal certification, so I took all my courses the year before last, because I'm afraid to take the test. One of the things that I suggested was having a mentor program for those high flyers, because even though the behavior is terrible, it's consistent with certain students. And
Mhm.
so it's the same students over and over again. So I'm like, if we know what students they are, let's create a system where they feel really comfortable with a particular adult and they can use that as accountability, because maybe they will respect that adult enough to take care of business.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they said that because of COVID, we're required, we have this initiative where we have to make up the time with studying. I forget what it's called, but because they're trying to recover that, they don't have the time or the manpower to commit to a mentorship program. But I cannot say that behavior, like I don't have issues in my classroom. That's not a,
Mhm.
but our campus is a different
Mhm.
story. Because I developed those relationships with my students, it's very rare that I have real rough behaviors.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow, it's interesting. So what happened when the students walk the corridor? Isn't there um, senior leadership who follow that up? This is
So,
weird.
so one of the things that they try to do is skipping sweeps. But
Oh.
the issue is, and the reason I know this is because when I was working on my coursework to get my principal certification, I had the opportunity to work or substitute for admin. So when I was substituting for admin and I was giving the consequences to the students, and I'm looking, I'm like, they did this, they skipped class a week ago and now I'm just now giving their consequence. I'm like, kids don't work that way. If they don't
Mhm.
get that consequence right away, it's like we talk about dogs. if you don't address the behavior right away, then they're going to forget and they don't know what they did. And it's the same thing. When I'm calling students in, they're like, skipping, that was a week ago. I was like, yep, but you still have to serve this consequence. So that's one of the things that they were hoping would help. But to be honest, it doesn't. And our kids are so bold. They skip in groups of 5+ kids and they're loud.
Wow.
Yes.
So where do they go when they skip?
They just walk the hallways, literally. If they notice there's admin in the hallway, they'll go the other way or they'll try to hide in bathrooms. So one of the things they started doing was locking certain bathrooms to prevent and to be able to pay attention to certain, and that was mostly too because of vaping, because there were certain restrooms that kids would do that in the most. And so that was about it. But like I said, I personally do not see improvement. When I would hear kids outside my classroom, I would tell them to move around, and for the most part they would. I'm like, y'all can skip somewhere else, but y'all aren't going to skip in front of my classroom and disrupt my students learning process. That's what we're not going to do.
Wow.
But if you're not admin, um, they don't necessarily, like, since COVID, these kids don't know me, because before COVID, all of the kids, whether they were in my class or not, knew me and had some form of relationship and respect with me. So I could correct their behavior and they would accept that redirection. But these
Mhm.
kids are different.
Mhm.
They don't care that you're an adult. They will talk to you any type of way.
Wow.
Hmm.
So you guys have a real issue. Even we have in behavior issue here. It's a situation where a lot of the time, SLT, senior leadership team, would remove students from your class. And
Hmm.
yes, they would get detention, but we also know detention doesn't work. But it's a situation where they are not on the corridor.
Hmm.
So that, I must say, that's a plus for us. They're not on
So
the
one of the
corridor.
things that I did suggest to our now associate principal, I was like, hey, how about when you guys do a sweep, you just sweep them into the auditorium and you sit in there and make them do some type of activity. And he was like, we wouldn't have room. And I was like, okay,
What?
so I can understand that. But if we're doing this consistently, maybe the numbers would reduce.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So
Yes, those
it's
were
a
his exact
real
words.
big thing.
Hmm.
Because you see, because there are no consequences for walking the corridor, they would continually do it. Because
Hmm.
they know their sanction is minimal. That's not even an issue.
Yes.
Wow. Oh my goodness. We quite
But then as
fortunate.
teachers, we're still accountable for their test scores, even though they're not in class to learn the material to take the test.
So how are you supposed to do that?
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned, and this is my motto since COVID, is what will be. Because I can't allow myself to stress over somebody else. All I can do is provide you the opportunity, and I will, because I teach mostly seniors. Like, you guys are going to graduate and be in the real world, so I don't hold hands. So I'm going to provide you multiple opportunities. If you refuse those opportunities, I'm like, okay, this is your choice, but you need to accept the grade that you're going to earn from not doing it.
Mhm.
Okay. And so I always bring it back to them. I'm like, yes, this is your choice. And as it comes for my test scores, I was super excited because mine were some of the highest in the district. And one of the things I didn't share earlier, but my school is what we call a Title I, which means it's over 80% economically disadvantaged. And
Wow.
so, but we have some really, really wealthy schools in our district. And I was happy because my test scores were higher than theirs. So I was happy about that. But outside of that, particularly, it affects our school rating. Our school rating dropped after COVID from a B to a C. And when you get a C rating in our district, they put you under where they have to watch you.
A
So they
special
send
measure.
district,
Okay.
yes, they send district professionals out randomly throughout the year, throughout the week. Some of them were even sitting in the parking lots because I remember one of the meetings, our principal was like, hey, so and so said they see teachers leaving before contract time's out. Like, we can't do that, guys. You don't know when these people are going to be here, and you need to be on your P's and Q's at all times. So, uh, what will be, will be. And if I can't get it done in the time that I'm provided to get it done, then we'll try again tomorrow. Because I also realize that whenever I bring things home, I'm taking away from time from family. And so
Mhm.
it really wasn't until COVID that I stopped planning and I stopped doing all the things at home. And if it's not on contract hour or y'all aren't paying me extra, because I do get paid to work on curriculum, but that's an agreement and we pick a time and day and I do that at that moment. But outside of that, if y'all aren't going to pay me for my time, you're not going to get it.
Mhm. Wow. Thank you. That's fantastic though, because it means that you're really disciplined. You really put boundaries. And that's
Hmm.
important. A lot of teachers need to be aware that they need to
Yes.
put boundaries and the importance of it. Because the minute you are so right, we take away things, we take things home, we actually take away family time. I'm just looking at my pile of marking over there. And I brought it home because I didn't, although I had a few free period, I wasn't able to do the marking there because I was preparing my
Yeah.
lessons.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, I have to take this home because the students need to get their grades. And
So
I'm
what?
thinking,
Oh, I'm
okay,
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, carry on. Yeah, that's fine.
So one of the things that I struggled with, especially during right before the COVID shutdown, was like I said, I moved up every year with my kids. So chemistry, I was really good in college, so I didn't mind teaching chemistry. That was nothing new. And then the junior year, I taught chemistry and astronomy was my thing. The district I was at prior to that, I developed all of the curriculum, wrote all the tests, did all the things. So I had a strong understanding of that. So I was like, okay, I'm good. But that senior year, when we ended up having that shutdown, I moved to the third floor, and I was teaching astronomy and earth and space science. And I've never taught earth science at all, like geology, plate tectonics, hydrosphere. Like, I never taught that. And so I was the only teacher with two content, astronomy and earth and space, and I was responsible for writing lesson plans for both of those classes. They were supposed to be in by a certain time of week, but I was like, listen, y'all want me to write lesson plans, y'all want me to develop interactive activities, we have to make sure that there's also different ones for the kids that aren't at home. And what? No way. I told him, I was like, y'all aren't going to get a lesson plan from me because y'all aren't giving me an extra day to, like, an extra period to work on this. I have the same conference period as teachers who teach one subject all day. And up until last year, I somehow had the most students out of all
Wow.
the other science teachers by 20.
What? That's a lot.
Yes.
A
Yes,
whole
my classes
class.
were packed full. My first and third period classes for the longest had 32 students each.
What?
Yes. And so, on top of that, then being responsible for making sure that I'm providing these students immediate feedback, I'm like, this is impossible, literally. As much
Hmm.
as I like to say I'm Wonder Woman, I'm not. And there's not enough time to get this stuff done. So,
Wow. It's interesting in terms of, thank you, in terms of what we were doing during COVID and what we started to do after COVID because the expectation remained.
and unfortunately, because of all of the academic and content loss of the kids, not only does it remain, it increased because now we not only have to teach them the new content, we have to recover the content that they lost.
But how are you going to do that?
They gave us like this 45-minute period during one class where we would have to review certain concepts with the kids. and then we taught our regular class.
All right. Wow, I must say we haven't had that here, but we, being aware that they miss some areas, so that sometimes you might teach it in a very summary format and
Hmm.
encourage them to read up on the topic, because
Hmm.
there's no way you could actually teach everything that they lost, because that's a
Yes.
lot of work.
And one of the areas that we struggle with on, particular at my school, because um, is their reading levels are really low.
Mm.
And unless I'm reading, like we're popcorn reading in class, I can't assign them reading and expect them to do it because they won't. Like we have to go through it together to ensure that the reading is happening.
Mm.
And they don't like reading aloud, which is a struggle.
Wow. I must say, when we actually read, I get them to, they take turns to read,
Hmm.
and then I discuss the contents, or else we won't get it done because,
Nope.
you know, as you say, it's interesting because yes, on Thursday, I said to the student, I gave you guys reading to do and you haven't done it. So I say, you know what I'm going to do? When we come back next week, I will have to literally A, check your book, and B, see the summary that you've done. So it's like
Hmm.
there's even extra pressure because they're not
Yes.
reading. And in order for them to get the work done, you have to be very conscious and
Hmm.
intentional of them actually getting them to do it.
So we're not really allowed to assign homework.
Okay.
Um, yes. So the only people that don't necessarily get in trouble for assigning homework are the teachers who teach dual credit. Since dual credit's really a college course, they can assign homework. The AP teachers kind of have to, because to prepare for the AP test, there's no way to get through all that content in class. But everybody else, homework is discouraged.
Okay. Right. Well, I said to students, I don't believe in homework, but I believe in preparing for my lesson. So you
Yes.
need to prepare for my lesson, right? So that
Yes.
when I throw a question at you, you know what I'm talking about. I say I'm not
Yes.
giving homework, I'm just giving preparation.
Yes. I love that. I love
Lesson
that. I'm gonna have to
preparation,
use
lesson
that.
preparation, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we do. Lesson
Yeah.
preparation.
I like that. It's because it changes their perspective on it.
Exactly. And I say, for example, if I'm going to ask you a question, let's say we're doing memory, and I ask you a question, I just come and say, okay, what's the different type of memory? And you don't know. It means that, you're not prepared for my lesson. So
Hmm.
we need to be prepared. I say, it doesn't matter whether or not you read psychology review or you read it from a textbook. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. I say, but making it easy, this is the hand that I'm going to be using in the next lesson.
Yes.
So it does work, especially for the years 12 and 13, because they don't want to be seen as not knowing anything with the peers,
Oh, for sure.
you know. So that aspect does work.
Good. I did my student teaching in middle school, but when I had started, the year that I started teaching, it was kind of like a situation as we're in now, where we didn't have the funds and they were laying teachers off. So I couldn't get a job in middle school because they wanted me to be generalist certified. They wanted me to be able to teach other subjects. And I was very truthful and authentic to myself. And I'm like, hey, the only way I'm going to be able to do the best I can do is if I'm in science.
Hmm.
I'm not teaching anything else. So if you guys can't hire me with my science certification, then you're just not going to hire me, which happened. And so I ended up at high school and being composite science certified and teaching high school because I couldn't get a job in middle school without the generalist certification.
All right. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, but at least now you know that you are teaching what you love.
Exactly, which I
Mhm.
feel like people should do.
Yes. I think it's so important because I say to when I actually through agency, I say I'm only going to teach this year group. I'm not teaching this year group. I say I really don't care. I say it's okay. Is I do not want to teach any younger children younger than we call it key stage 4. I don't want to teach key stage 4. I only want the older children, which we're
Yes.
talking about the 15, 16-year-old who is studying for the A levels. I say younger ones. I say I don't know how to teach them, so I'm not going to pretend. I've been there,
No.
done it, and I've now moved on to the older children. It's very difficult to come down to the younger ones. So sorry.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's a challenge. So I rather not put myself through that. Having said that, this school I'm in, they've given me two groups, year 8 and year 9, and I'm saying to them, I'm trying my best. I am trying my best. you know
Yes.
it's not easy, but the plus is in that school there isn't a behavior issue. So in
Good.
terms of getting them to follow through with what I want them to do, it works nicely, because anytime they're disruptive, okay, I'm going to put the whole class on detention. Nobody wants to be on detention, so I'm good. Nobody wants me to call the parents either, so it's good.
My kids are the exact same way though. As soon as I say I'm going to call your mom or dad, then they're like, "No, please don't. They're not going to let me
Exactly.
go out this weekend if you call them."
Exactly. So that's the plus for me. Thank you very much for that. One of the another question I'm going to ask you is in terms of, we know now that a lot of teachers are suffering from mental health issues and students are suffering from mental health issue. How do you support them on that journey?
So that is something that I'm working on regularly. Um, I I will share what I suggest should happen. For the teachers, one of the things that I know worked for me is I had to go see a psychiatrist. So I feel like people need to be willing to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because we can't do it on our own.
Mhm,
One of the things that I wish we would do is those mental health services. I wish they were a lot less expensive than what
mhm,
they are for teachers, especially because our job is so mentally draining.
mhm,
We need to be able to support teachers in that manner. I
mhm,
feel like for the most part, teachers do a really good job supporting students because that's how we're taught. We're
mhm,
taught to, because what's that, Maslow's needs? We're taught to address all of their things. But the
mhm,
issue is we're addressing all of those things, but our things aren't being addressed. And
mhm,
so that's where we then begin to have conflict, because we're
mhm,
cognizant and we're aware and we're making decisions, I feel, that are healthy for the students.
mhm,
Um, and one of the things that we do say is just remember, like, these kids have lost this. So we have to be willing, if they don't know it, to teach them to know it.
mhm.
And so I feel like we do a good job with our students. And I say a teacher that has a heart for kids will have a heart for kids. Hi, Araya. Girl, go downstairs.
Hello.
Will have a heart for kids and they will do what's best for the kids. But I feel like we have dropped the ball on supporting teachers. And
Mhm,
I think that's why, which I mean, kind of helped our district because so many teachers left, they didn't really have to fire that many people. But in that same sense, we're losing really good teachers
mhm,
because they're exhausted
mhm,
mentally,
mhm,
physically, and emotionally.
mhm, mhm. Thank you. That is so very true, because I feel in a lot of schools they forget about the mental health of the teachers and expect them to constantly support the students, but who is supporting the teachers?
Exactly.
you know and what you say is so important in terms of going to see a counselor or therapist or
Yes.
whoever. There is still the fear element around that. People seem to
Yes.
think that when they go and see these people that they're mad. No, you're not mad. You just need to share the burden. You cannot carry it by
Yeah,
yourself.
for sure. So one of the things that, along with COVID, outside of realizing that I had a deviated septum and I had to have surgery for that, was I have been I was late diagnosed ADHD, but it was something I always knew I had. But one of the things, if you do any of the research on it, and this is why I'm really good with my ADHD students, because I understand the way their brain works and the way that they function. But um, once all of that load became super heavy, it was really hard for me to be a functioning person without help. And
Mhm.
so, like I said, it caused us to slow down, think, and realize we can't do this if we're not right. So I
Mhm.
need to address all of the things and provide myself all of the opportunities and the resources and materials that are out there so that I can be the best version for me and then for everybody else.
Mhm. That is so fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Final question. There are a number of teachers now facing anxiety, mental health issue, burnout, etc. What tips would you give them to ensure that they deal with it or they support themselves?
So, number one, teachers need to support each other. We are our best line of defense because we know what it feels like, and so being able to have those honest conversations is super important. I also believe that we have to realize that every day isn't going to be ideal, and just because we've had rough times doesn't mean like it's not for us, right? Because one of the things I did struggle with a lot, it was like asking my husband, like, "Hey, I don't know if this is for me." But I personally am constantly reminded. I'm like, I know God purposed this for me, and one of the things I've been provided is many opportunities just to see how everything connects. So, um, growing in a garden, when you think about the seed, they have to break through that soil. And so it's not going to be easy, right? And so one of the things that I realize is the same thing with education. Like it's not going to be easy. And I tell my students this all the time. Um, if it's easy, it's not worth it, right? Because it's just given to you. So I realize that it requires a lot of hard work. So I feel like it's a perspective change. I know people always say focused on your why, but sometimes that doesn't always really help. Um, but for me, I know that this is where I'm purposed. I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's kind of like my gasoline for that keeps me moving, even when I'm exhausted. But what we also have to realize is if we need to stop, that's okay too. That doesn't make you a bad teacher. If you need to rest, rest. Yourself has to come first because you can't pour if your cup is empty. So you have to fill your cup. And for me, that was meditation during COVID. I had dedicated time where I had meditation or prayer because I needed an opportunity to sit in quiet. And that's super important too for creative people, which I feel like all educators are creative because we have to develop all these things.
Mhm.
So, in order for us to be the best version, that requires quiet, that requires relaxation, that requires rest. And so, you just have to change your perspective on what we thought education was just teachers work, 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 go, 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 and
Mhm.
realize the work and go comes after the rest, relaxation, meditation, healing.
Thank you for that. That is so deep. It is so deep and so real, in terms of the meditation aspect, in terms of having quiet time. Because I think that sometimes we forget ourselves in all of that.
Yes, all of the noise.
Yeah,
And we have to step away from that noise.
yeah, we have to. We really have to. It is so important for us as teachers. Thank you so very much for that, Desiree. Have you got anything else you want to share with us?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm like, I can talk all day,
I
but
think
nothing's
that's why
coming
we
to my
do
mind
well.
off top.
I think that's what we do well because I love talking. You see, most teachers, right? Most teachers. I think that's the reason why we in the job. It was handed to us because God realized some of us are able to
Hmm.
use our vocal cords very well,
Hmm.
and as a means of empowering and impacting others. And I think that's, I feel that I do that quite well, just like you, because most teachers, most good teachers are able to talk and make students feel comfortable.
For sure. And one of the things that I always use as it relates to my teaching style is I'm like, the best teacher for me was Jesus, and Jesus taught in analogies. So when I'm teaching to my students, I always use analogies that are familiar with them to create that relevance and significance, because a lot of what I teach in astronomy is very abstract and it goes way above their heads. So I have to bring it back down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is so very true. Thank you for that. And you know, the interesting thing about it, I keep on saying to teachers all the time, in order for students to understand the contents, we need to make it related to them.
For sure.
And if it is not relating, they're not going to learn it. They're going to
Not
see
a
themselves here and the contents there. In order
mm-hmm,
to merge the two, they have to see it as active. And I say to
mm-hmm.
students, it's interesting because yesterday I was saying to some students, sociology is everywhere. Everywhere you
Yes,
look, there is sociology. I say you're sitting
yes,
in the class now, there's about sociology because you work, you are a group. So that's an aspect of sociology, how you work as a group. And you need to start seeing subjects everywhere.
yes, yes.
So the minute we start making them start looking at that, they begin to have a different perspective. And A, they
Exactly.
begin to enjoy the subject. And B, they begin to understand the subject.
Yes.
You know, it's the same thing with maths. We are taught maths from a textbook. But if someone said
Mhm,
to you, oh, everything in life is maths, and, look at
mhm.
this, you've been given tablets from the doctor. They say 3 times a day. When you count it, it's maths. But we're
Yes,
not told that. We told that maths in the textbook, and people begin to fear maths because they
yes.
cannot relate to maths. They see the maths out there and they're in here. But the minute
Mhm.
you start make it related, they begin to say, "Oh yes, maths is everywhere," and it's
Yes.
important. It's
It is very
important.
important.
Need to be related. Thank you
Yes.
very much for that, Desiree. I really enjoy our conversation. It was
Yes.
fantastic. Thank you so very much. And if you
Thank
know,
you for the opportunity.
you're welcome. And if you know any educators who want to come and share the journey with us, what it is like and how they're being supported, you know, what the journey they're on, just tell them to come in to share it with us on the
I
platform because it's
will.
important that we
Yes,
realize we're not alone. We all on this journey together, whether or not
for
we
sure.
in the UK, we in the Caribbean, we in India, we are all on this journey. It's called
Yes.
teachers and students.
Yes.
You know. Thank you very much. Oh my, I was going to say year 12, Jesus. Because when I finished my lesson and I asked them to summarize, I said, "Thank you very much, my year 12. Have a fantastic day." And it's like, I just went into
I
teaching.
love it.
Thank you very much, my Facebook audience. I really do appreciate you guys for logging on and sharing the platform, sharing the contents. It is so important that we keep on share, because for people realize that yes, we are human first and we teachers after. And
Yes.
everything we do, we need support of each other. And we need to take care of each other. It is so very important. Take care, guys. Remember where you are. Also, remember to demonstrate your gratitude for every single thing. It doesn't matter how challenging the days. Remember, the universe never give us all negatives. In between that negative, you could guarantee there are positive there. Sometimes you have to dig so deep to find it. You think it's not there, but it is there. You just have to dig deep to find it. And when you find it, you celebrate it because it's worth celebrating. Anyway, guys, take care, stay blessed. Have a fantastic night, morning where you are, and see you next week. Oh, I'm just trying to.